We've been in this series talking about how Jesus is humble, but he's also king, and that he's both. In fact, because he's both, it creates this really dichotomy that makes it sometimes difficult to actually follow Jesus, right? So there's an element of him, like how many of you've ever thought, I just wish God would tell me exactly what to do? I just wish he would tell me exactly what to do. But then if he did that, you'd be like, he's so bossy. Like, we're really hard to please. We are really hard to please. And so Jesus came, he came as a king, but he also came humble. And I want to just talk real briefly about the fact that he came as just a baby, which is really what this season is all about. And in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, it reads like this. It says, now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and we've come to worship him. And when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all of Jerusalem was troubled with him. And assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for it has been written by the prophets. Skipping down in verse 7, it says, then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him. The story goes on that the wise men show up to where Jesus was born, and they fall down, they worship him, and they bring him gifts. And what we also know is that King Herod had no desire to show up and worship Jesus. In fact, just the opposite. He wanted to know where Jesus was so he could show up and end the life of this Jesus that was being called the King of the Jews. For Herod thought, I am the King of the Jews. And so that's kind of where our story picks up. And have you ever been at something and you thought to yourself, in fact, you were so blown away by what you were at, you thought, more people should be here? You ever have a moment like that? I remember a few years ago, Christina and I, we were in Colorado, actually around this time of the year. It was just after Christmas. And we were there, and we had some time, and so we were like, man, let's go see a movie, right? Let's go see a movie, and we went, and we get to the theater, and nobody's there. And sometimes it's kind of nice to go see a movie when nobody's there. It's the worst to go see a movie when you and your girl are there, and there's one other guy there. You know what I mean? Because you feel like you're in the middle of a horror movie. Like, you're like, I don't know what's about to happen to me. That guy is sitting back there in the back with an extra large popcorn. I feel very unsafe. You just kind of keep an eye on him the whole movie. Okay, he's still there. Okay, cool. We go see this movie. Nobody's in the theater. And the movie starts, and after 8 minutes of watching the opening scene of this movie, I am cheesing. I look over at my wife. I go, this is absolutely amazing. And the movie was called The Greatest Showman. Now, let me see if you've seen this movie. Have you seen this movie? Oh, all of you have seen it, right? I was sitting, anybody else have the same experience? Like, you just feel good on the inside. Like if you don't feel good on the inside watching that movie, I don't think you have a soul. Like, it just makes you feel all kinds of ways. It makes you feel good. But I was so fascinated that there was nobody in the theater. And so I immediately start looking at how this movie did the first weekend of the box. How did this movie do on opening weekend? And it did absolutely terrible. And I was shocked. And so I felt like it was my personal responsibility to be what John the Baptist was for Jesus, I would be for The Greatest Showman. I would pave the way for the great. So I got on the horn and I'm calling my friends. I'm like, I just had an incredible cinematic experience, and you have to go see The Greatest. I'm like, dude, you have to go see it this weekend. And what's interesting about a movie like The Greatest Showman is that I wasn't the only one. Me and Christina weren't the only ones that had that experience. The Greatest Showman was actually based on what it did in the box office the first weekend and what it ultimately did. A lot of other people had the same experience, because almost never in the history had a movie gross that much after starting out so poorly. And now think about this for just a second. At Grace City Church, we believe that Christmas, right, is the symbolic day that we celebrate that God came to earth through the person of Jesus Christ. That's what we believe Christmas to be. That's why we celebrate Christmas, is because God came to earth. And now think about this for a second. God comes to earth and there's 5 people there. God comes to earth, the greatest thing that has literally happened up to this point in human history. The only thing probably greater is like the resurrection that would happen years later of that same person that was God come to earth. And you show up, and the only people that are there are mom and dad and 3 random dudes. But by the way, could you? I stand corrected. They were wise men. And could you imagine like Mary and Joseph, like these 3 random people? I mean, imagine like for some of you that have had children recently, like imagine just like 3 dudes you've never seen. We're here to see your baby. No, you're not, actually. Thank you very much. In fact, my only point today is that the stature with which we see Jesus can approximate the measure with which we will worship him. So how you see Jesus, what's the stature? How big is Jesus to you? How mighty is he? How awesome is he? Is he King of Kings? Is he Lord of Lords? How you see Jesus can approximate the measure with which you will worship him. You see, he was king, and because he was king, there were some people that he had never met at his stable just days after he was born. But because he came so humbly, it was so hard for people to wrap their mind around that everybody should have been there, and there were still only those 3 people. And sometimes I think we need this season. I'm grateful that it's set up in our calendar for us to reflect every year. God came to earth, and when God comes to earth, where do I find myself? Am I going, man, I got to get to Jesus, or do I have other things to do? See, in verse 1, now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. And this is what they said. They said, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? Where is he who had been born King of the Jews? Now, it's amazing because we've had a number of people in our church that they've taken over like their family business. I talk to men and women all the time, and they kind of took over the family business. Their family had a dental practice, or their family had an air conditioning company, and they take over the family business. But you and I would think that's a bit strange if from the time that child was born, they took over that business. Like the running joke around our church is like justice is everybody's boss, right? Now we say that like kind of tongue in cheek, right? Because Justice obviously isn't quite ready for all that, and I don't even know if he wants to do that, and he may not want to do ministry at all. But it would be a bit strange if at an early age, all of a sudden he became the pastor. Like if he was 8 and I'm like, I dub you, your senior pastor. Here he is, Justice Gard. Here he is. Good luck. May the force be with you. And nobody had ever or has ever been born a king. Nobody, except for Jesus. In fact, that's why Herod was so bothered by it, because even Herod was like, no, I was just born Herod. I wasn't born king, it was just Herod. And then it was Herod the Great, and then it became Herod the King. And Jesus is born king. He comes to earth. And so what you got to understand is that when Jesus came, listen, don't underestimate his stature, his smallness, the nature with which he came, and do not separate that from his power and authority and his ability to change lives. In fact, even at 12 years old, we know that the people, right, the religious leaders of his day were blown away at who Jesus was from the time that he was 12 years old. See, we cannot confuse how Jesus came with what he came to do. And in verse 3, it says, when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all of Jerusalem was troubled with him. It's funny to me how we can be so bothered at the praise of another. You ever find, now this isn't a desirable trait that we have. This is not something we talk about, but have you ever overheard somebody, or maybe you were in the conversation where somebody was talking highly about somebody you didn't really like? No? Okay, cool. Just me? Cool. Come on, you ever heard somebody go, oh, I just love her. She is so sweet. And you're thinking, I don't think she's that sweet. Oh my God, that person is such a good singer. Man, they are absolutely amazing. And you're a singer and you're like, I mean, if we're just talking about good singers, we insert my name, like. The rumblings, Jesus is a baby and he intimidates the king of his day. Jesus has been born for like a cup of coffee and King Herod is troubled by him. I am so grateful that Jesus and Jesus alone can trouble whatever's troubling you. I'm so grateful that no matter what you're experiencing, no matter what you're going, the King of Judea is troubled by a 4-day-old baby. Come on, sometimes as believers, if you're a believer in here, sometimes we don't even believe that Jesus is that powerful with that measure of faith. That we go, man, Jesus is who he says he is and he can do what he says that he can do. See, whenever you go to make a decision to worship Jesus, it's gonna trouble some people around you. It's just the nature. It's just gonna trouble some entity. Like I remember when I started making a decision to worship Jesus, it troubled and it bothered my friends. Like they didn't fully get it. My family didn't fully get it. The people, Christians that went to my school, they were like, it's a phase and it's not a real thing. It's gonna trouble like some people around you. However, the person it will trouble sometimes the most is that little thing inside of you that really wants lordship over your own life. And so when you come, and that's what Christmas Eve and just Christmas Day is really all about, it's around centering yourself and orienting yourself around Jesus Christ. And that might trouble some people around you, but it's also gonna trouble some things inside of you. Because if you're gonna orient and center your life around Jesus, it means there are things inside of you and things that are going on in and through you that have to die, maybe by the end of the year, but hopefully in 2021, there's some things that you're going, if I'm really gonna center my life around who Jesus is, it's gonna bother me a little bit on the inside. I really believe this. In fact, this was my problem with this whole year, is I felt like people just thought God was agreeing with every one of their opinions. If this year in 2020, Jesus agreed with every single one of your opinions, I don't think you were following Jesus. I know it's Christmas Eve. We're gonna sing a Christmas song in just a second. It's too serious for Christmas Eve. And I don't say that with any condemnation. I say that because we just need a recentering. I need a recentering. I don't know about you, I need a recentering. Because there've been times this year where I was fearful. There was times this year where I was angry. There was times this year where I felt misunderstood. There were times this year where I felt judged. There were times this year where I judged. There were times this year where I was angry. And I just don't want to live my life like that. You don't have to live your life like that. We get to orient our life around who Jesus is. And when you do that, it's gonna trouble some things going on around you. And that's a beautiful and that's a good thing. And then in verse 7, it says, then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem saying, go and search diligently for the child. And when you found him, bring word to me that I may too come and worship him. But again, we know that he doesn't wanna worship him. There's a plan to disrupt the worship of Jesus. And there will always be a plan for your life to disrupt your worship for Jesus. There'll always be a plan. This is why sometimes, you ever go to try to take some ground in an area of your life and then all of a sudden it feels like there's a plan to disrupt that thing? Like sometimes you're like, okay, this year we're gonna save some money. We've never like put money in savings, and this year we're gonna save some money. And then you go to the dentist, and what you thought was like one of your 2 free cleanings a year turned into like, okay, you have $1,800 worth of work that you desperately need. Otherwise, your teeth are gonna rot outside of your face or melt in your mouth while you're sleeping. What do you wanna do? You decide. Sometimes it just seems like right when you want to take some ground in an area, there's some things that want to disrupt your life and they want to get in there and they want to mess with you. Listen, anytime you start taking steps towards Jesus, there's going to be some disruptions. There's going to be some things that want to invade your space. And sometimes, like I said, they will be external things, and many times they will be internal things. Where, man, I just want to start following God. And yet as soon as you start following Jesus and worshiping Jesus, you find yourself being more irritable than you used to be. And you're like, man, I'm just trying to follow Jesus. And I just want to love people. And now everything that people are doing is bothering me. And you and I, man, have to get to the place where we just say, okay, I have found what life is all about. And life is all about Jesus. Life is all about Jesus. I know it's cliche, but like the running joke, I didn't grow up in Sunday school, but the running joke, right, in Sunday school was the answer is always Jesus. And I think sometimes we get too mature for our own good. And we get too smart for our own good. We're like, well, the answer, it's a joke. But I'm here to tell you, I think the answer is always Jesus. I think the answer to your frustration is Jesus. I think the answer to your lack of focus is Jesus. I think the answer to that thing inside of you that is unfulfilled is Jesus. I think the answer to your marriage is Jesus. I think the answer to your children's going wayward is Jesus. I think your unfulfillment in your career is Jesus. It's too easy, Pastor. I know, we're gonna sing and light candles. I promise. Stop it. I just want to open presents. Christina said when she grew up, they used to sing, this has nothing to do with my message, it's just fascinating to me. They used to, on Christmas Eve, Christina, was it Christmas Eve? I know you're trying to take care of our 2 children, but I just got a question real quick. On Christmas Eve, was it Christmas Eve or Christmas Day that you guys would sing Happy Birthday, Jesus, and bring out a birthday cake? Christmas Eve. That's some real Christian stuff right there, guys. I'm not going to embarrass you, but I kind of want to. Is there anybody in here? Is anybody in here that does that? Like okay, cool, right on. Okay, well, a few of you. That's fantastic. You guys have a good time tonight. Happy birthday, dear Jesus. That's just bad. It is his birthday. You're right. You're right. She said it's his birthday. Orient your life around Jesus. Center your life and you will not be disappointed. You will never come in second by putting God first. Ever. Orient your life around Jesus. Come on, church. Can we stand to our feet for